So I just read an article on the show a few days, maybe a week ago, talking about Texas's plan to remove the farm bill or to rescind the farm bill. The farm bill, I believe it's the federal farm bill, allowed for the selling of certain hemp products and really, really low grade THC products, like under 0.1% or whatever. They only really allowed that qualification in because to even sell hemp products at all, it's impossible to completely remove any trace of THC from hemp. Most hemp does not have enough THC in it to be psychoactive if you were to smoke it or ingest it. But it is impossible to remove all of it. And so to be allowed to use hemp, you have to be allowed to have some small percentage of it. Well, with that came CBD, came Delta 8, Delta 9, came all these synthetic and pseudo real THC alternatives. And they absolutely took over the market in Texas because we don't have any alternative. Because it's either go get illegal black market weed from your local weed dealer, or and risk jail or something, or go to one of these smoke shops and pick up a Delta 8, Delta 9 THCA cart that pretty much, to most non-regular smokers feels almost exactly the same and will be more than sufficient, to get them a bit inebriated. Um, and so my understanding was that that was looking good, that there was enough support in the House, Senate, and by the governor to actually get that passed, to get the ban passed, and that it would basically shut down overnight um, this like pseudo THC market that we have in Texas. But then I saw this article just a couple days ago that completely undermines it and shows a bill coming through the House that has the exact opposite intentions. Its intentions are to expand access to medical marijuana, not restrict it. In Texas, we technically have a medical marijuana program. It's basically non-existent though, because it only allows for a handful of extremely debilitating diseases like serious epilepsy or like stage 4 cancer or whatever. And even then, when you do have the medical card, it only allows for THC products up to like 1 or 2% or whatever. Basically, like not enough to matter. Like it so low that you even question why they made this bill in the first place. Like the bill is almost entirely symbolic. My understanding is that there isn't a single proper legal medical dispensary in Texas because of that exact reason. Because why would anybody why would anybody do that? And so my understanding is this bill that they're bringing forward will expand the number of diagnoses that are eligible medical marijuana for a medical marijuana card, as well as hopefully expand the percentages and allowances for what medical marijuana card holders can actually purchase. As well as I saw something that I would potentially have a big problem with, and it's that creating a different standard. I saw something about like veterans don't have any standard, that like if you're a regular citizen, you have to get diagnosed with one of these conditions to be given a medical marijuana card, but that if you're a veteran, you don't have to be diagnosed with anything. You could just claim it, that there are no restrictions. That seems very strange to me, and I'm hoping that this article will flesh out that a bit more. The Texas House of Representatives has given initial approval to a bill that would significantly expand the state's medical marijuana program. After clearing committee last week, the bipartisan legislation from Representatives Ken King and Penny Morales Shaw passed the full House on second reading in a 118 to 16 vote on Monday. It will need a final third reading vote before potentially moving to the Senate. Wow, that's a huge margin to win by 118 to 16. I had no idea. This completely undermines everything that I heard about the other bill that was looking to restrict the medical marijuana, or not the medical marijuana market, the fake marijuana market, basically. The measure would expand the types of products patients could buy and also add multiple qualifying conditions for people to become registered patients. In 2015, Texas passed the Compassionate Use Act that allowed patients with epilepsy to access low THC cannabis. Since then, that's the like performative fake medical bill that I was talking about, that basically it creates such unreasonable conditions that nobody's going to use it. Since then, the program has been expanded to include additional medical conditions, but Texans still struggle to get access to the medicine uh, they're legally allowed to receive, King said on the floor. There are not enough dispensing organizations licensed in the state, and current law limits how and where the products can be stored and distributed. Specifically, the measure would allow patients to access cannabis patches, lotions, suppositories, approved inhalers, nebulizers, and vaping devices. The currently limited list of qualifying conditions would be expanded to include would be chronic pain, glaucoma, traumatic brain injury, spinal neuropathy, Crohn's disease, or other inflammatory bowel disease, degenerative disc disease, and any terminal illness for patients receiving hospice or palliative care. This is the part. So they do have this part. This is the part that I was weirded out about. Military veterans would be able to become registered cannabis patients for any medical condition, and the Texas Department of State Health Services would also be authorized for further expand the list. That seems very, very weird to me. I what is the reasoning behind that? I'm trying to conceive of the reasoning behind why a veteran should be exempt from these qualifications, but a regular citizen shouldn't. What about being in the military would make you what? Less I don't even know what I can't even come up with a hypothetical like funny argument as to why this would make sense. Like what's like a funny argument I can present for this? Okay, so this argument doesn't make any sense, but like let's just roll with it here. The lawmakers are okay with you getting cannabis for any medical condition, but that they think that people are willing to lie about a lot of other conditions. And so they listed the conditions that people they think that they are unwilling or unable to lie about, and that they think by virtue of being in the military, people are less willing and able to lie, and therefore we can trust them on their own self-diagnoses about these other conditions that we wouldn't trust the citizens. That's the only reasoning I can possibly come up with, and it's so stupid, it makes my brain hurt. So, like, this seems indicative of just, like, blind veteran worship that I kind of find so frustrating sometimes, this way that we need to, like, worship veterans in this country, or, like, it's this political performance that, like, not only Republican but the Democrats and Republicans both engage in. I look, I think it is definitely virtuous to be willing to sacrifice yourself to save other people, to protect your country or whatever. Certainly a virtuous uh good thing that we should recognize. But I think something to also keep in mind is that that is not why the majority of people are in the army today. The majority, if you poll people why they're in the army today, why they're in the military today, most of them say for the benefits. They say for the free college, they say for the health care, they say for the pension, they say for the long-term support that it gives you in various ways. That is the main reason they are going to do it. Not because like they're like, oh, I want to protect the country, or oh, like I think my life is less valuable than other people, or like I care about more other people more than me, or whatever. None of that is the reason. I guess what I'm saying is, if somebody is in the military for the exact same reasons that somebody would say go work at McDonald's, does it really? Are they really like doing anything special? Are they really doing anything special? I really question that, and, like, I don't think it's parse out combat roles and those in non-combat roles, because they all play a hand in functioning of the military, whatever, right? The guy driving the supply truck is just as important as the guy shooting the gun. The guy shooting the gun could not shoot the gun if it wasn't for the guy driving the supply truck. But the same thing could be said for the McDonald's employee, right? Like McDonald's functioning as a restaurant is part of our functioning as a society. If McDonald's wasn't there, a lot of people would go hungry or wouldn't have access to food, or yada yada yada, and so things would have to change. And so that McDonald's employee is an essential part of the functioning of society, just as the military is. And so Now, obviously, you could replace McDonald's with a lot of things, and it'd be harder to replace the military. But the argument is basically that like most people are not joining the military for altruistic reasons. They're joining the military for selfish reasons. And I'm not saying selfish in a negative way, because is it a negative way when the McDonald's worker or the CEO or the software developer goes to work for a modest wage or a retirement package or whatever? No, but it shows that like I feel like that makes this weird worship misplaced. If a person actually is joining the military for purely altruistic reasons, then I think the whole thank you for your service, maybe even giving them special benefits like they're exempt from this medical marijuana rules or whatever, might make sense to me. But because most people are joining the military for the exact same reasons that you would become a software developer or you would join the construction firm, is just it seems so weird to me. And it seems like one of those things where it's like people are afraid to question. If you even start to talk about it like I am, some people will get angry at you and think like you're anti-military or you hate the troops or something, which is just anti-intellectual. Okay, that's just so silly. Anyways, I've spent too long on this. Let's move on. HB 46 would additionally mandate that the Department of Public Safety issue 11 dispensary license. Blah, blah, blah. HB 46 would additionally mandate that the Department of Public Safety issue 11 dispensary licenses within the 11 designated public health regions across the state. It would further allow dispensaries to open satellite locations if approved. An amendment that was adopted on the floor would grandfather existing medical cannabis dispensary satellite locations, ensure a competitive business licensing application process, create a lifeline for when new licenses must be issued, amend background check rules, allow physicians to determine dosage, and remove a 1.2 gram limit for possession by patients and instead let doctors recommend any amount they see fit. Second Amendment approved by members would require doctors who issue medical cannabis recommendations to report them to the state's prescription drug monitoring system. That seems like it makes sense to me. If you're going to if you're going to treat it medically, treat it like as if it's another drug with medicinal purposes, then yeah, you should report it just like you should have to report your usage of Viagra or whatever, or prescription Viagra. If ultimately enacted, the bill would significantly build upon Texas's current limited medical marijuana program, which allows patients with one of 8 qualifying conditions access certain non-smokable cannabis products containing no more than 0.5% by dry weight. This kind of comprehensive expansion of the Texas Compassionate Use Program is a long time coming, Heather Fazio, director of the Texas Cannabis Policy Center, said in a press release. Since its inception, TCUP has been unreasonably restrictive for both patients and operators. We applaud Chairman King and the Texas House for taking a real step towards a more inclusive program for sick Texans. Fazio supports blah, blah, blah. The legislation is advancing months after DPS released a report advising that the state's currently limited medical marijuana system does not provide for statewide access for patients, and recommending that the number of licensed dispensaries be significantly expanded to meet demand. But like, what demand really is there if the product limit is at what 0.5% THC? Like, what can you possibly make with that? You're gonna have to keep making some weird delta 8, delta 9 THCA derivatives with that instead of the actual thing, which people want. A recent poll found that 4 in 5 Texas voters want to see marijuana legalized in some form. A recent poll found that 4 in 5 Texas voters want to see marijuana legalized in some form, and most also want to see regulations around cannabis relaxed. Meanwhile, in Texas, a House committee approved a Senate passed bill earlier this month that would prohibit cities from putting any citizen initiative on local ballots that would decriminalize marijuana, other controlled substances, as several localities have already done despite lawsuits from the state attorney general. Okay, yeah, so that aligns with what I mentioned earlier, where there was a bill just like a week ago that they apparently were almost set to pass, and that was like poised to go through both the House, Senate, and the governor to restrict the sort of weird pseudo THC market that we have in Texas right now. Uh, Under the proposal, state law would be amended to say that local entities may not place an item on a ballot, including a municipal charter or charter amendment that would provide that the local entity will not fully enforce state drug laws. So my understanding is that most of the major cities in Texas have decriminalized um, marijuana. I believe Dallas, Austin, Houston, and maybe a few other places like I think Denton did as well. And I believe the way that they're doing it is basically like saying any amount, any possession amount under a certain threshold. I don't know what the threshold is. It's probably like an ounce or a couple grams of concentrate or something. But if you're under that threshold, that the city will not use police resources to try and go after you or prosecute you or whatever. And that basically they're just going to ignore any marijuana possession under a certain threshold. Um, that's what it is right now, and the Texas state governor, especially, but also a good chunk of the Republican Party in the House and Senate in Texas right now are opposed to the sort of illicit pseudo THC market right now that we have right now, and are they want to restrict it. They want to take it away completely. And this is a point where they're a bit hypocritical, right? They talk about being small government, but when it comes to the definition of small government, these local cities saying, "Hey, we don't want to spend resources." Austin's like, "Hey, we don't care about weed. We don't want to spend resources dealing with it." That they're like, "No, no, you're not allowed to do that." I love the idea that you have these small government conservatives, but they're not really small government. They're small government to the state. The state is the perfect size. I love the idea of this small government person. Like for them, the state is the perfect size, and that any smaller is too small, but any bigger is too big. But they just call themselves small government conservatives, just like out of convenience, out of strategically. I love the idea though of them just being like, the state is perfect, the perfect size. Smaller, more local? No, 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 we don't want that. We don't want that. We don't want that. But the state's perfect size. But local government, that's the most important way to do this, guys. Those guys in Washington don't have our best interest at heart, you know? While several courts have previously upheld local cannabis decriminalization laws, an appellate court comprised of three conservative justices appointed by Governor Greg Abbott has recently pushed back against two of those rulings, siding with the state in its legal challenge to the marijuana policy in Austin and San Marcos. San Marcos is the city that has Texas State University. That's what it's like 90% of that city is Texas State University. San Marcos is like, I'm pretty sure, like an hour south of Austin. It's like an hour drive from Austin or so. Despite the ongoing litigation and advancement of the House and Senate bills, Texas activists have their targets set on yet another city, Kyle, where they hope ooh, that is a huge typo. Where they hope to put an initiative before voters to enact local marijuana reform at the ballot this coming November. Abbott has lashed out against the municipal cannabis reform efforts. Quote, local communities such as towns, cities, and counties, they don't have the authority to override state law, the governor said last May. Quote, if they want to see a different law passed, they need to work with their legislators. Let's legislate to make let's legislate to work to make sure that the state as a state will pass some of the law. I think this is really cynical and bad faith, though, that he's saying this, because I think even if they did it through all the proper channels, like the House and the Senate both passed their own versions of the bill to get it through to the governor, I'm pretty sure the Texas governor has veto power and that he would veto it. So he's saying do it through the proper channels and it's fine. But no, but if they did it through the proper channels, you would squash it, right? I'm going to double check right now that Texas governor has veto power because I know there are like there's a big difference between the power that governors are allotted in states. There are like there are soft power governors and there are hard power governors depending on the state and the rules and whatnot. So let's see. Okay, so not only does the governor have veto power, they have line item veto power, which is like maximally strong. So yeah, I this is in total bad faith. There's absolutely no way that Greg Abbott would sign a legal medical marijuana or recreational marijuana bill in Texas into law if it passed through the House and Senate through proper channels or whatever the fuck he's insinuating. He would not support it. He would veto it and block it with all his might. He said it would lead to chaos and create an unworkable system for voters in individual cities to be picking and choosing the laws they want to abide by under state statute. Abbott has previously said that he doesn't believe people should be in jail over marijuana possession, although he mistakenly suggested at the time that Texas had already enacted a decriminalization policy to that end. Oh my God, did our governor literally think that we had marijuana decriminalized when we didn't? Bro. In 2023, Ground Game released a report that looked at the impacts of marijuana reform laws. It found that the measures will keep hundreds of people out of jail, even as they have led to blowback from law enforcement in some cities. The initiatives have also driven voter turnout by being on the ballot, the reporter said. Another cannabis decriminalization measure that went before voters in San Antonio that year was overwhelmingly defeated, but that proposal also included unrelated provisions to prevent enforcement of abortion restrictions. Very weird that they created a ballot proposal for marijuana, but they tied in some abortion enforcement nonsense into it. I can't think of a faster way to kill marijuana bill that ostensibly would pass in Texas by slapping on some weird anti-abortion nonsense onto it. That's how you're gonna. It seems like such a weird choice. I wonder if that was done on purpose. I wonder if like maybe the people that are against the marijuana bill somehow got this strapped to it, knowing that it would kill the bill. Wouldn't surprise me if that turned out to be the case. Meanwhile, in March, the Texas Senate approved a bill that cannabis advocates and stakeholders said would effectively eradicate the state's hemp industry, prohibiting consumable products derived from the plant that contain any amount of THC. That, as well as another measure from Representative Joe Moody to decriminalize cannabis statewide, is one of the latest of nearly 24 cannabis related proposals filed so far in Texas for the current legislative session. Various other measures would legalize adult use cannabis, remove criminal penalties for cannabis possession, and adjust the state's existing medical marijuana laws, among others. Moody sponsored a similar marijuana decriminalization bill last legislative session in 2023. That measure, HB 218, passed the House on an 87 to 59 vote, but later died in a Senate committee. The House had already passed earlier cannabis decriminalization proposals during the two previous legislative sessions, in 2021 and 2019, but the efforts have consistently stalled in the Senate amid opposition from the lieutenant governor. Separately, the Texas House last week passed a pair of bills designated to ensure speedy access to psychedelic-assisted therapy in the event of federal approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Interesting. So I didn't know about that. So I guess they passed some preemptive bill saying if the USDA approves certain psychedelic assisted therapies that they will automatically be legalized in Texas. I guess it's sort of like those anti-abortion bill those anti-abortion trigger bills they had in place in a number of states following the removal of the Roe v. Wade ruling. There were a number of states that had passed in the weeks prior to the expected Roe v. Wade overturning. They had passed bills saying basically as soon as the government, like if they were to overturn Roe v. Wade, if the Supreme Court makes a decision in this sort of way, that this bill will automatically kick in and will automatically enforce an abortion ban like immediately as soon as the Supreme Court releases a decision like that. I wonder if this works in a very similar manner. So we're going to read one more article about this from the Texas Tribune talking about this same medical marijuana program. The Texas House advanced a bill Tuesday that would expand the conditions eligible for the state's medical marijuana program, including chronic pain and Crohn's disease, and allow for prescribed smokable products to be sold by prescription. House Bill 46 by Representative Ken King, a Canadian. What? Are Canadian? I don't know what that means. Is the guy's last name Canadian? I'm so confused. House Bill 46 by Representative Ken King, our Canadian, would allow patients in the state's medical marijuana program to use products like cannabis patches, lotions, prescribed inhalers, and vaping devices. The House approved the bill 122 to 21 on Tuesday, advancing it to the Senate. If it becomes law, the list of qualifying conditions would also expand to include chronic pain, traumatic brain injury, Crohn's disease, and digestive and degenerative disc disease. The bill would also let licensed dispensers open more satellite locations, which supporters say is necessary to prevent the industry from crumbling. There are too many Texans who are still struggling to get access to the medicine they legally have a right to receive, King said on Monday from the floor, pointing out his bill would allow for additional dispensing locations outside of Central Texas, where all dispensaries are currently located. Representative Penny Morales Shaw, Democrat from Houston, said rural Texans would have more access. Too many of our fellow quote, too many of our fellow Texans are forced to either suffer or self-medicate because they don't have sufficient access. And this is an amazing alternative to addictive, harmful opioids, which we know is a huge problem, she said on Monday. In Texas, licensed medical cannabis providers must house all operations, including cannabis cultivation, processing, extracting, manufacturing, testing, and dispensing under one roof. Oh my God, I had no idea that is hilariously restrictive and it completely explains why there's like basically zero dispensaries. On top of the like THC, the insane THC percentage restrictions that they have, like even for products that are in these legal dispensaries, I think they're only allowed to have up to like a couple percentage or something of THC in them. The idea that they have to do literally everything under the same roof, cultivate, process, extract, manufacture, test, and dispense is crazy. It's so that is clearly a bill. Whenever they wrote that bill, to me, the way that is written shows me 100% that it was infected by people that didn't want it to pass. That they somehow got it to pass, but that the people that didn't want it to pass managed to water it down and infect it with bad stuff enough and bad policy enough that it just is effectively doesn't exist. State regulations also prohibit inventory storage of medical cannabis products in multiple locations, so products must be distributed from the central dispensary. Any prescriptions scheduled for pickup outside the central dispensary must be driven daily to and from the pickup location, sometimes thousands of miles round trip. This method puts wear and tear on our vehicles, limits the amount of time we can spend with patients, and can compromise product integrity, said Terrence Bowe, marketing manager for Good Blend, Austin-based medical marijuana producer. We might drive 200 miles, and the person we are delivering to might not even be there at the moment. Yeah, I'm just thinking of like Uber Eats or whatever. Think of all the times like Uber Eats drivers go to drop off something and the person actually isn't there waiting for them. Imagine that, but you had to drive 200 miles to deliver this weed, and they just like ghost you. This has made their products more expensive and limited where the medical marijuana program can reach, hampering the smell, hampering the small medical cannabis market in Texas. We also don't have enough doctors in the program and not enough people prescribing for it, and most patients find us through a doctor. We are dealing with several different challenges, but we are hopeful these bills might help, said Bo. House Bill 46 is meant to correct some of this problem by allowing medical marijuana distributors to store their products in various satellite locations instead of having to drive across the state to return the product every day. However, the most significant potential challenge would be allowing smokable marijuana products, such as vapes, to be introduced into the program, helping to match the popularity of products found in the hemp industry. The Texas medical program can currently only sell gummies, lozenges, topicals, beverages, and tinctures, as smoking or vaping products have not been approved. Many hemp products, which are unregulated and sold more freely in smoke shops, also give the same high as medical marijuana, but are cheaper for consumers and don't require a visit to a medical professional for pre approval to purchase. This ease of access has pretty much made the medical marijuana program irrelevant, according to the medical marijuana industry. That completely makes sense. Yes, there's basically nothing that distinguishes the kind of product that you would get in one of these legal dispensaries and the stuff that you would just get at the smoke shop down the street. And if there's basically no difference, if the THC cap at the legal dispensary is like 2%, which is basically non-existent, and the cap at the smoke shop is 0.2%, which is effectively the same, might as well be the same percentage, then there's basically no reason for people to go to these dispensaries and buy what I would assume is very overpriced, very low grade weed when they can just go buy the like synthetic pseudo weed, Delta 8, Delta 9, THCA stuff at the smoke shop down the street. That completely makes sense to me and lines up with my personal experience. Dylan Dabblegott, a senior manager of cultivation at Good Blend, said the only difference between hemp and medical marijuana is that hemp is harvested earlier. Hemp is just a little more flexible, while marijuana is produced for high THC alone, he said. By allowing smokables and expanding the conditions, the medical marijuana producers are hoping this will open the market up to more patients and increase the demand for products. Texas lawmakers are also determining the future of hemp this session, as a House panel approved last month a bill also authored by King to tighten regulations on Texas's consumable hemp industry, setting up a potential clash with Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and the Senate, who are pursuing a total ban on THC products. I think we can coexist with hemp. We just want an even playing field, said Bo. I believe additional regulations are needed on hemp, and we need to loosen some on medical marijuana. King noted on Monday that HB 46 would have no effect on hemp and that the future of the industry will be decided another day. The other bill will be coming to a House floor near you, he told lawmakers. Interesting. So I'm fascinated to see where all of this will land, um, because it seems like there's two conflicting bills in the Texas legislature right now. One trying to outright ban all like currently legal pseudo marijuana products, basically ban any hemp derivative product at all, which would completely kill the pseudo THC market that we have right now. Any Delta 8, Delta 9, THCA, all that stuff would be illegal overnight. On one hand, you have a bill trying to do that, and then on the other hand, you have a bill trying to expand the medical marijuana program, the bare bones. It's I wouldn't even say bare bones; it's less than bare bones. But the bare bones medical marijuana program we have in Texas right now, there's another bill trying to expand that. So I'm fascinated to see how this will turn out because it seems I I feel like there has to be a number of people in the legislature that have supported both bills based on the number of votes because both bills seem to have passed pretty like by decent margins, which makes me think that there may be some that voted for both, which I would love to hear the reasoning from a legislature that voted for both the restriction of the pseudo THC hemp industry we have, but also expand the legal marijuana industry. It seems like a strange position to hold, but I don't know. So I'm fascinated to see how all this turns out, and hopefully it results in more and better access to THC products for Texans. If you live in the DFW area, you are by distance farther from a legal dispensary than like almost anywhere in the country because so much of the country has legalized at this point that most places that you could find yourself in the country, you are like not that far. Maybe you can cross the next state over, you cross the border of the next state over and you can go or something. But for Texas, there's no close access to recreational THC marijuana at all. Oklahoma to the north has a medical program, but it's pretty restrictive and you can't access it if you're a Texas resident. I don't think Louisiana to the east has anything. And to the west, we have New Mexico, which I believe does have a program, but the drive from DFW or Austin or Houston or anywhere anybody actually lives in Texas to New Mexico, where a dispensary might be, is really, really long. It's like a 12-hour drive or something insane like that. So if you live in Texas, if you live in the DFW area, you are in one of the driest areas as far as legal high grade marijuana products go.